Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing very, very well and you are having a lovely, lovely Saturday. It is beautiful here this morning. It's only like about 10 o'clock, so I'm still getting my day sort of kick-started, and I thought I would kickstart it with you guys by wrapping up my June reading. So I hope you guys had a great reading month in June. I read some really good books that I'm super excited to tell you about a little bit more in detail. So let's get started. The first book that I read in June is Free Food for Millionaires by Min Jin Lee. Now, Min Jin Lee is currently everywhere because of Pachinko, which is a fantastic novel, saga, just so engrossing, finalist for the National Book Award. Highly, highly recommend you pick up Pachinko. But this is her first novel. And this is the reissue edition that came out, and it's thinner. It's really still a chunkster, but it's worth the read. And what I really like about this edition, before I get into it, is at the start of this, there is sort of this prologue where Min Jin Lee talks about how hard it was to get this book published. And she talks about how she had written many books and none of them accepted, and how she was trying to decide if she was in the right career, which is great. So I really think that if you really want sort of a fascinating look into the world of writers and a real look into the world of writers, this book's introduction is fantastic. This book is, in its own way, a family saga. This is set in New York. This centers around Cassie. Cassie is a Korean American. She moved here when she was very young. She's from a lower middle class family. It's her sister, and her parents. Her parents are both, they work in a dry cleaning business. They do not own it, they just work in it, but they've worked in the same positions for a very, very long time. They're very stable, and that's sort of the world that she comes from. At the beginning of the novel, we learn that Cassie she's sharp as a whip, and she has gone to Princeton, and she's become part of a world that's very different than the way she grew up. There's a lot of affluency that she becomes accustomed to, and doesn't know how to enter that world, because once she gets back from Princeton, what is she going to do with her life? And that is really what this book centers around, is as Cassie decides what her life is about, we get introduced to a myriad of different characters. Her sister is, at the beginning of the book, about to graduate high school and go to medical school, and she deals with falling in love and getting married, and so Cassie has that angle. Her parents, she has a fight with her father, Cassie does at the beginning of the book, which means that he kicks her out of the house, and she goes to the one place that she thinks she's going to stay, and something happens, and she doesn't know what's going to happen in her world. This book is really a lot about money. How money affects different people, different class structures. Cassie is mentored by a woman who owns a department store, and how that woman thinks about the world. Cassie's struggles with money really go throughout the entire book. She meets a guy, she falls in love with him, he's doing well, things take a turn. She becomes best friends with a girl that she went to high school with, and their relationship. So it's very Dickens in nature, because you know how when you read a Victorian novel, you'll just be reading through the pages and a new character will pop up, and what Min Jin Lee will do is give you enough about that character to create a sense of who they are and where they come from, and they become an integral part of the history and the story, but you may never see them again, but you remember them throughout the rest of the pages. I will say that I think the book got a little bit bogged down in Cassie's poverty, and it sort of became a recurring theme so much that by the end of it, when it's sort of, I don't want to say it became old, but it came a little bit repetitious. But the writing is so clear and crisp and clean, and you're so invested in the characters. It didn't derail me from finishing the book. It just seemed like it was a little bit too long. The way that relationships are described, her parents' relationships, her friends' relationships, her relationships, and sort of the socioeconomic ladder that she is trying to climb, it's just really well done. And Min Jin Lee is just a marvelous human being. Now, I tell this story, I saw her originally for Pachinko at Stanford University. I was just one person in a line, signed my book, but I posted a picture. She commented on Twitter. We sort of went back and forth. I met her again at another event, and at that event, she knew who I was. She knew my name, she remembered me. Then I saw her at Book Expo America months and months later, she walked up and she remembered my name and she said, how was I? She remembers stuff about me, and that is fantastic. She just has a way of connecting with the people that read her books. She looks at you and you know she's listening. She never seems like she's distracted from the people. She really appreciates her readers, and she's just sweet, and she's got style like nobody's business, people. Fantastic. I do really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. I know that this is the first book in what's a 3-part series. This book deals with Korean-American immigrant experience. Pachinko deals with the Korean-Japanese immigrant experience. I am fascinated to know what book 3 is going to deal with. And I am a huge fan of Injin Lee's, and I will read everything she's put out. So there you go. That was a long spiel on a very, very good book. I know it's long, but it's definitely worth your time. I promise. The next book I talked about in my Gray Expectations June and July releases video. This is a new series I'm doing where I'm going to put out every month the books I'm excited to have on my shelves that are coming out in that current month. And I talked about the memoir Sick by Porochista Khakpour, and this is about her struggle with illness. She is diagnosed with Lyme disease. I want to say stage 4. I apologize if that's not accurate. And this deals with sort of, I think that is very much part of this book, but this deals about illness in a whole myriad of ways. She has a very addictive personality. She deals with drug addiction. She deals with just straight addiction in relationships, and there's a lot of stuff. Her tone is extremely conversational. She definitely feels like she is right there on the other side, just really telling you a story, which is fantastic. I love her on Twitter. I will say I wanted more of the Lyme disease in this book, and I know that sounds strange, but I follow her on Twitter, I follow her on Instagram, I follow her, and I'm just really invested in what she has going on, and that part of her life fascinated me, and I really wanted to know more. But I mean, that's just a quibble because the book is very, very good, and I highly recommend Sick by Porochista Khakpour. And yeah, as she's on tour right now, I know that her illness sometimes moves things around, but if you can get to see her, I highly recommend it. She's an inspirational story, so there you go. The next book I read, oh, so good, you guys, is The Red Threads of Fortune by Ji Yang. This is the second book in a trilogy of novellas. The first book was The Black Tides of Heaven. I read that last month. I can't tell you much about this book because I don't want to spoil the first book, but what they do, Ji Yang, what they do better than anybody is there's this connection between the books without relying too heavily. Now, this book follows the first book. As I said in that video when I talked about it, the first book sets up a world, 2 things that are important. There's a matriarch who sort of rules this land. She has these twins at the beginning of that novella, and she gives them to a monastery until one of them is determined to be a prophet, has these future visions. She comes to take that one back, and the other one joins the rebellion against the patriarch. Now, the other really interesting thing in this book is that all the people in the world are born genderless and are referred to without gender until they choose their gender as adults. And I don't want to give much more away because that actually becomes an important part of book 1. This is the follow-up story to that, and I will say I liked this one even better than the first one, and I really liked the first one. And the third one comes out July 31st. I will be at Green Apple Books watching R.L. Kwan's release date for The Incendiaries, and I will be picking up the third book in this. I cannot wait. Tor.com does amazing novellas, and these are no exception. And the cover art, gosh. So yeah, Ji Yang's The Red Threads of Fortune. Please pick up the first one, read the second one, and get ready for the third one. I promise. The next book I read, so you know I told you guys about The Reluctant Fortune Teller, how it was a very good summer read. This is also a very good summer read, and it is now out in paperback. So you can take it to the pool, you can take it to the beach, and that is No One Can Pronounce My Name by Rakesh Satyal. And I just adored this book. I just adored it. So this is the story of 2 people and their lives. So they're both immigrants to the United States from India. They are in Cleveland, I want to say. Yes, Cleveland. And funny enough, I'm going to Cleveland for a week for work next week. So there you go. This is Hari. Hari is a single adult male who still lives with his mother. We find out at the very beginning of the book that he and his mother and his sister moved to America after the passing of his father, and his sister has just passed. And what he has been doing is coming home, dressing in a sari, and pretending to be his sister because his mother took the death of his sister so hard. That is sort of the impetus that gets us into the world that is Harit, but it's not the most important thing about him. He is way more dynamic than that, that event in his life. He works at a store in the men's accessory section. He has a friend there named Teddy. There's a lot of dynamic about him and the world and his life, and how he has lacked living his own life, sacrificing it for many reasons, but I won't get into them. The other main character in the book is Rajana. Rajana is married. She has a son who has just left for Princeton. She works at a medical office. Her relationship with her husband was arranged, but there is love there, but they're on sort of, there's a separation, there's a disconnect going on in there. And this is about her figuring out who she is also, and also what relationship she's want. We get a bunch of different perspectives. We get her son's perspective. We get the perspective of Teddy, who is the guy that Harit works with at the store. We get Rajana is in a writing group. She wants to write Indian paranormal fiction, which is just fantastically handled. And I will say, Rakesh, if you are going to write the novel that is sort of in this book by Rajana, I will read it. I will read it because it sounds so good. But yeah, so what happens is they are introduced to each other, Rajana and Harit, and they sort of help each other become the people that they've always wanted to be. There is some hairy stuff in the book. It definitely deals with themes of, you know, discovery and self-discovery. There is definitely an LGBTQ plus theme throughout the novel. There is also sort of that empty nest syndrome. What do you do as a mother when your life has been about your son, when your son is gone and you can take over what your life is going to be about again? It's just really well written. It's really charming. And it leaves you feeling good at the end, which everyone needs a book like that every once in a while. And I mean, come on, the cover is fantastic. So that's No One Can Pronounce My Name by Rakesh Satyal. I will say that I listened to the audio of this as well, and I highly recommend it. So if you are looking for an audiobook, this is one I would recommend also. So summer read, audiobook, whatever you want to do, this is a good one for you. The last book I'm not going to talk too much about because it was also my book club book to wrap up my Around the World in 1,000 Pages book club, and that's Kiss of the Spider Woman by Manuel Puig. This book blew my mind. It is so good. This is the story of two people locked in prison together. We have Melina and Valentine. Melina has been locked up for corruption of a minor. He is a homosexual adult male. And Valentine is in prison because he is thought to be part of the rebellion against the Argentinian political system. This book is told totally in dialogue or excerpts of dialogue, and it is so well done. It paints this picture of the relationship. Melina tells stories to Valentine to pass the time of movies that he has seen, and they are cinematic in scope. And it's about their relationship. It's about who's being truthful to whom. How do you use each other for totally different reasons? The only thing that I struggled with is there are some footnotes which I didn't buy into, and they didn't quite make sense, but they're very interesting because they deal with homosexuality. And the book was written in the 70s, so it's very interesting to go back and see what was in that section. And yeah, no, this book is fantastic. If you haven't read it, I highly, highly recommend Kiss of a Spider Woman by Manuel Puig. It is flippin' fantastic, probably in my top 10 favorite books of all time now. So that is what I read in the month of June. What did you guys read? Have you read any of these? Let's talk about it down below. As always, if you are a return subscriber, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. If you are new to my channel, thank you. I hope you like what you saw. Please subscribe down below. And as always, until next time, happy reading, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!